Your genes hold the answers to your family's overall health. I'm Dr. Paula Krupstad, and on the Get to the Root with Hope for Healing podcast, I sit down with experts in genetics, functional medicine, and family care to explore what's really going on beneath the surface so you can stop guessing and start healing. From personalized insights to practical tools, we bring you whole family wellness that starts at the root. Welcome to the Get to the Root podcast. I'm Dr. Paula Krupstad, and joining me today is Mr. Jon Bennert. He is the CEO of AirOasis. He's a co-founder of AirOasis, and he's been in the indoor air quality industry and space for about 25 years. So it's so important when we're dealing with our families, our environment, to have clean air. And today, Jon's going to help us understand what AirOasis does. So welcome, Jon.
Thank you for having me, Paula.
Great. Now, you guys are located in Abilene, right?
We're actually in Amarillo.
Amarillo. Okay, got the A's mixed up there in Texas. All right. Well, we deal with a lot of people here in our practice that have a condition called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. But clean air isn't just for people with CIRS, as we call it. But I would like you to explain how the AirOasis units work and what's in them, and break that down. And as you explain that, I'll ask you questions along the way. That's one of the fun things doing these podcasts. I learn things along the way. So, all
That
right.
sounds great.
Okay. So take it away, Jon.
All righty. I appreciate having me on the podcast today, Dr. Crumpstat. So our units actually differ mainly because they contain 5 different technologies. Actually, when Dr. Shoemaker came to us years and years ago, he came to us because of our filter technology that we were offering at the time, which was bipolar ionization. We had some PCO, some UV, things like that. That was just a filterless type technology. And then come to find out as we got more involved with CIRS, that a lot of people were also buying a good HEPA filter along with it, and which kind of added a financial burden to everybody, right? So there's no reason to have to buy 2 different devices to try to accomplish clean air. So that's when we first came out with the original iAdapt Air, because we thought, okay, well, it seems to be this constant struggle in the industry of what's better, filterless or filtered. And honestly, you need both. So they said, let's do everybody a favor and put it all into one package. And that's how we invented the first iAdapt Air. And now we're on the iAdapt Air 2.0, which contains H13 medical grade HEPA filter, beta carbon, silver ion filter, as well as UVC LEDs, which are antimicrobial, and bipolar ionization. So we actually have 5 technologies in one package, and that's really what separates us. Most other products on the market will just be a HEPA filter or just some sort of filterless technology. I think we're the first company that decided, hey, let's put it all in one box and package it all together to give everybody an easy button.
Oh, you've got in AirOasis HEPA filtration, ultra UVC, ultraviolet light. And what does that do for the air?
So UVC actually disrupts the RNA and DNA of anything biological. So it'll actually sterilize mold, bacteria, viruses, things like that. And we actually shine the UVC kind of inside the unit as well as down the backside of the filters to not only try to sanitize some of the air passing through the device, because to be honest, at the high airflow rates, like a device like ours, it's not really going to you know, sterilize any of those contaminants on the first pass that's actually airborne. It takes several passes for it to happen, which is why we have a higher airflow rate. But also the surface it shines on will be decontaminated. So that helps to keep the inside of your air purifier clean of any microbes or anything biological, as well as the backside of the filters.
Okay. Now, somebody who knows absolutely nothing about air conditioning or cleaning air, can you explain what bipolar ionization is? Pretend you're talking to a third grade
All
uh,
right.
teacher who's going to try to explain it to the classroom, just to really help us understand.
3rd grade level. Okay. I'll
Why
do
don't
my
we go? Let's go to
best.
eighth. Let's go to eighth grade level. Okay, thanks.
So I guess the simplest explanation is basically with bipolar ionization, which there's a lot of other forms of ionization out there. There's negative ionizers and even different ways to produce negative ions, which that's what usually gives the negative connotation of producing ozone or even like a static charge in the air, Blackwell syndrome, all these negative aspects of ionization that you want to steer clear of. With our bipolar ionization, we don't produce any ozone. What it actually does is we call it bipolar because there's a positive pole and a negative pole.
Okay.
And they're made up of little tiny carbon brushes. So on each one of those poles or brush heads, you have several different points, which you would call like a needle point, but it's actually the tip of a piece of carbon. And you're basically just taking water vapor. So just water, there's already humidity that's already present in your air. We don't add to it, just take what's already present. And you're splitting up that H2O, as everybody knows. I think even an eighth grader knows water's H2O, right? So
Yeah.
you're splitting that up into positive hydrogen and negative oxygen.
Okay.
So that's all you're doing. And then those ions will then go out into the air. And of course, in order to become happy again, its goal is to become water once again, right? So in the process of trying to do that, it's actually going to oxidize different contaminants in the air and basically, still electrons and still hydrogen and try to get back to H2O once again. It's the simplest way I can put it. In the process of doing that, it's going to kind of clump around and cause the different contaminants to cluster, which makes them heavy, so they fall out of the air, or they're big enough to get trapped into a filter more efficiently. And it also, like I said, oxidizes them and sterilizes whatever the contaminant is. So it's not just acting in the air purifier, but it's kind of our seek and destroy technology to go out and find contaminants in the open airspace.
Okay. Okay.
Hopefully, I
So
didn't get too sciencey in that, but
yeah, but that helps me understand a little bit more and other people too. And then with the activated carbon and the silver in there, that's really good to know also. So many times I'm explaining to people the difference between HEPA filtration and how small some of these particles are. So would you kind of break down when we're talking about in the interior of a water damaged building, what HEPA is gonna get, and then what the rest of the technology is gonna take care of.
yeah, sure. So, I mean, in a water damaged building, you have a lot of contaminants going on, which by the way, it's interesting. I just had my first experience in our own home with water damage. We had an upstairs shower that the shower pan leaked, and we
Mm.
woke up one morning with water dripping through the ceiling. So,
Oh, no.
we got to
No,
go
no,
through
no.
our experience recently, which is interesting. I learned more than I wanted to about how insurance and everything else operates,
Yes.
which makes my heart pour out even more to anybody who's been through that experience. But yeah, when you're going through that, I mean, you're producing all sorts of molds, bacterias. Then the remediation process, all the construction just puts more dust, more contaminants in the air. So you have a lot of things going on. So you definitely want a good air purifier during that time. But in an ordinary house where everything's fine at the moment, you're going to have different size particles still. So it could be something from like wildfire smoke could happen. It could be a wildfire nearby, smoke's coming into your house, and if it's a small trace, which we get those around here sometimes too. And I love it because, some of our kids will come over to our house during wildfires because you'll see the air in our home's always clean because, of course, we have air purifiers everywhere. Privilege of being a CEO of AirOasis. So,
Yeah.
and you'll see the air quality indicator. If you open a door, you'll see the air quality indicator ring turn red, and then we'll shut the door and it'll kind of go back down and keep our air clean. But the particle it's sensing during a wildfire is going to be more like a PM 2.5 or even smaller particle. So a particle smaller than 2 microns. And you're not
That's
going to trap
tiny. That's
very, very.
tiny.
We've actually
Okay.
tested our units all the way down to 0.05 microns, which is basically you're getting into the nanometer scale at that point. So you're not even visible to the human eye. So it can trap particles as small as that. And then you have other things that are going to be like as big as pollen or something like that. It's going to be more like 10 microns in size. But when you have active mold situation in your home, those mold fragments or even during the remediation, the fragments of even the dead mold can cause CIRS reactions. And those fragments can also get down, closer to the 2.5 range. So if you
Okay.
don't have, a good HEPA filter, because, there's ranges of HEPA even, right? To be considered true HEPA is just an H10, and which is only was it 99.93% effective, and you get medical grade, you're at 99.97. So you kind of start splitting hairs at some point, but it's not just the efficiency of the filter, but the size of the particle it can actually trap as well.
Yeah. Question. So I thought and this is where you can educate me. HEPA filtration was about 4 micrometers, but it sounds like there's various sizes of HEPA. And then pollen, that's kind of taken care of with the HEPA filtration. But then we've got of dead mold particles that are everywhere, and those are microbial volatile organic compounds that are so teeny weeny that the rest of the technology gets rid of. But what is with HEPA, the size of these little critters?
With a medical grade HEPA like we have at H13, you can get as small as like the coronavirus.
Wow.
So try a very small part. I mean, during COVID, our business just went crazy. I mean, we couldn't even keep up because, of course, we had UVC and stuff in there as well, which killed COVID. So that mixed with the HEPA filtration that can actually trap viruses was kind of a whirlwind of a time. But so we can get down to that size of a particle with an H13 filter. But you also have other, like I said, a true HEPA is H10, but you also have things that
Okay.
are called like a HEPA-like filter, sometimes they call it, which goes below H10. So the bigger the number, the smaller the particle you can capture, I guess, and more efficient the filter becomes. So yeah, you can get down there pretty small.
Okay. I really appreciated what you said too about the breakdown products of contaminants in a water damaged building, because whole spores are 0.2% of what may be found in a water damaged building, and it's all the other little broken down pieces that make people sick. And you've just explained elegantly how the AirOasis units clean all that up.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, they break down even, a lot of times at a CIRS conference, you hear them talking about beta glucans and stuff like that, which is basically like the fragments off of the hairs and the mold and things like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
well, it even traps all that. And whatever on top of the particles, like I said, we have 5 different layers for a reason, because the next stage is gonna be the carbon. So when you get into the MVOCs or anything that's a VOC, any sort of a chemical compounds that are emitted from the bacteria or the mold or any other contaminant you may experience in your home, even VOCs that come off furniture or you name it, or that enter from outside, all those VOCs are trapped in the carbon. So that's kind of
Okay.
what happens. The carbon basically has little tiny pores on it, and as it passes through the carbon, those pores trap all those VOCs. And so that's why we have that within the product. And did you know what the number one contaminant in the house usually is?
No, what?
Dust. I mean,
Dust,
every time we
dust.
exhale, we exhale and we put all kinds of things into the air. When our skin actually flakes off and becomes itty bitty little particles, creates a lot of dust in your home just from your own skin, your dead
Yeah,
hair, you name it. So,
yeah.
but even if you have the perfect home, if you're living in it, you're contaminating there.
I'd like to thank Fagron Genomics for sponsoring our podcast. Without knowing what your precision genetics are, you don't have a roadmap. So please log on to our website, schedule a welcome call, and see what the Wellness Blueprint can do for you. That's the premier and proprietary genetic panel that Fagron has allowed us to create.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you brought up the dust, I'm so grateful that you did, because what we've learned in the last several years in the CIRS community is that mold is less than 7% of what makes people sick. And it's the endotoxins, I call it the gram-negative poopy water bacteria in a home. The overflowed toilets, the shower pans, the dishwashers, the refrigerators, and you've got food particles, and then you get all these nasty bugs that are growing. But actinomycetes, so actinomycetes being a family of bacteria that are very nasty, and they like to live in our skin. And the sebum, which is the greasy substance on our face and our scalp, and we shed our skin cells, and that actinos gets inhaled and swallowed. So what you just said about the dust, and then what we're talking about all the time, actinos, 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 plus it'll grow up the schnoz. I mean, we'll find it growing up people's noses, and typically people with eczema and eczema, psoriasis, just nasty skin. And There's also blackheads, whiteheads, and these things called lipomas, which are nasty little bugaboos. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and step into this. People talk about air. Well, first, let's go back to ozone. So we use medical ozone where we take blood out and we put ozone in, and we will also do it in the ears or in the nose. But people get this wrong idea that they can run an ozone generator, and that makes things so much worse because it breaks all those particles apart even more. I mean, if you had an empty house, that would be one thing, but I'm really glad you brought up that we don't, it doesn't generate the ozone. Would you go ahead and kind of tell us how the AirOasis units compared to, say, Air Doctors?
Sure. Air Doctor, if I'm correct, has HEPA filtration, carbon. I think they even have a unit that does have ionization as well. I believe there's just a negative ionizer. So they have basically three technologies within their unit. As I stated earlier, we kind of go a step farther by having those three. Plus, we have an antimicrobial silver filter, which is called a silver ion filter. It doesn't release any ions, they're surface borne, but any contaminants that touch that filter layer will be sterilized. Of course, and then we also add UVC to it as well. And we use bipolar ionization instead of negative ionization. So that's kind of the main differences between our products. You always want to look at CADR ratings as well. So they have a variety of products in different sizes. We do as well. So I think our largest unit probably has the highest CADR rating of anything I've seen,
What do
which
you
CADR, oh, probably a whole nother
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah, what is that? I'm like, can you say that?
Yeah, so CADR, or sometimes they call it CADR. It's a clean air delivery rate. So it's basically how fast an air purifier cleans the air, which you use to determine how big of a space it can cover. You want at least 5 air exchanges per hour. So you want to basically cycle the air in the room through the air purifier at least 5 times an hour. So no matter whether you buy an AirOasis or you buy a competitor, that's probably the number one thing you want to look at is, do I have the right CADR rating for my room? It's also a mistake people make a lot of times is they'll say, okay, well, my room is 500 square feet. The AirOasis small is 256 square feet maximum. The medium is 536, if I remember correctly. I may be a little off. So they'll be like, I'm just going to throw a medium eye adapter in that space or whatever the competitor size is. And the problem is you're actually better off a lot of times going with like 2 small air purifiers kind of set catty corner across the room from each other, because that air purifier has to pull the air into it to clean it most of the time. So, and that's another reason why we added the ionization, because most people won't do that. Instead of buying 2 smaller units to allow better coverage in their room, they just want to put the economical choice, one big one stuck in one corner somewhere and hope it does the job, right? And that's why we add ionization, which is where a lot of our competitors fall short. And that bipolar ionization, like I said, is to seek and destroy. So that way, if you don't pull the air through the air purifier, you're still sending out those positive and negative ions that can spread all the way across the room and try to reach those other pockets where a normal air purifier wouldn't get.
Okay, okay. What
I
I
might get off a little bit from your question, but
No, that helps us understand, people don't know what they don't know until they test, and it's what's hiding in the dust. Oh, what's there, they just don't know. I really like the small unit. I still have the older unit, and I take it with me wherever I go. I put it in a suitcase, or I even have the carrying case, and I check it, or I carry it on. I just put medically necessary around the edges, and that I really enjoy that. So the units do have filters that need to be changed. And I guess it just depends on how dusty and, where you are, what the air is cleaning. John, one thing that really impressed me when I was first learning about biotoxin illness to begin with was that people who fail something called a visual contrast screening test, when there's an inflammatory element in the bloodstream of people, the blood flow in the retina is impaired, and it helps you distinguish. We're not talking color, but we're talking black and white and contrast. And so what I thought was so cool was someone who failed their visual contrast screening test. If they were in a room with an AirOasis for an hour, they could then pass their VCS, depending on how big the load was. So as I think about it, cycling the air 5 times in an hour, that explains why the blowing is so strong. We have in our air conditioning system in our office here in Shenandoah something called bipolar ionization units. We have 5 of those we put into the HVAC. They let me do that, but then on top of that, I still have the AirOasis units sitting around. It's like, it's so important, and we just recommend these for all of our patients. Hey, John, I just want to thank you for explaining this technology to people and with the 5 different things that are within the AirOasis units. Let's go through that one more time. So it's the HEPA filtration, the bipolar ionization, the ultraviolet C, which is antimicrobial. Then we've got the activated carbon filter and the silver
Yes.
filtration.
You got
Yay!
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good,
Yes.
good. Okay, well, we'll just keep recommending it, and we're going to give our listeners the affiliate link. We have it on our website as products we love, but yeah, we love these. They're just outstanding. And I always tell people, watch out for the sales because you can stock up on filters and things like that too. So how big is, you said Amarillo, how big is the place where you make all these things? Are these products made here in the USA?
So we do some production here in our warehouse.
Okay.
Some production happens outside of our warehouse as well. So it's kind of a,
Okay.
a group effort.
Okay.
Certain aspects like I guess one thing that makes our unit actually different as well, the removable Wi-Fi chips. We do have people that are EMF sensitive and don't want the Wi-Fi. So we made it
Yeah.
removable. So
Oh,
for instance, that part is actually made in the USA. We install that here in Amarillo, Texas, in our own factory because not only people sensitive to EMS, but they also want to know where their data is going, right? So if
yeah.
anything, data. So it's all hosted up on US servers. The chips are made here in the US, all that good stuff. But yeah, there are components from overseas as well. It's a group
Yeah.
effort. Yeah. So
That is huge to know that the Wi-Fi that they can remove that because we do have a lot of people that are EMF sensitive. So that's huge too. I mean, I don't think anybody else is doing this like you guys are. So, all right. Well, John, thank you for cleaning our air and for letting me ask you all these questions it was in medical school, we called it pimping. It was like, let me pimp you about this stuff. It's like, okay, break it down, explain it in real people speak. So, anything else you want to just, I always talk about the value of things. It's like investing in these air purifiers, investing in clean water, investing in a great mattress, that's non-toxic. So, would you kind of give our listening audience your elevator speech about investing in appropriate air cleaning technology?
yeah. And we always do our best at AirOasis as well to try to make things affordable. When you're looking at affordable options, there's a lot out there. Don't just look at the price of the initial device. And, sometimes people get sticker shock when they look at HEPA filters as well, because HEPA is not cheap, but, in order to filter out that small of a particle, it does cost a little more money, but that's why we try to make our filters last as well. So look at the costs over the long term. Be on an iAdapt Air 2.0, you're going to replace that filter somewhere between 1 and 2 years, depending on how heavy a fan speed you run it on and stuff, but your health is worth it. Like I said, I recently had an issue in my house as they went and ripped out that shower and some of the drywall. There was mold back behind it. And talking to that insurance agent, firstly, made me a little upset because there were parts that they want to cover. And I was like, well, we need to rip out as much drywall as possible, make sure we get all the mold and then treat any structural surfaces and everything else. And his response was, well, we're only going to replace the visual aspects of it. If you want to do anything else, you got to pay for it out of pocket. All you need to do is spray some bleach on it, a little bit of Kills, and you're fine. I was like, I don't think you know what I know, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and And in talking to him, he could see the look on my face when he said it, right? And, my look was probably like, "You're an idiot." And,
Yeah.
to that, he quickly responded back. He's like, "Look, every home has mold in it, so we're not gonna try to eliminate all of it." And that's where he left it. So just knowing that shows the value in having, like, an air purifier in your home. And he's not the
Yeah.
only one. I have a lot of friends that are, different various types of contractors, either remodelers, home builders, roofers, and they all tell me the same thing. They're like, "Look, it's not a matter of whether or not your home has mold in it, it's just a matter of whether or not you found it."
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing that
It's
there's
true.
toxic contaminants in your home, you should invest in clean air because it impacts your health. It impacts your vision, impacts your energy levels. I've seen it so debilitating that people can't get out of bed.
Mhm.
Definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, and we know that CIRS can lead to death if people don't, address it appropriately. I really appreciate your comments. Yeah, we are embroiled in some litigation. I had to close my downtown office because it was severely water damaged by the obstetrics and gynecology office above us that put in too many toilets beyond code. The air conditioning system had just profound amounts of microbial growth in it, and we had staff members getting sick. And it's like I could not stay there, and it's just devastating, financially. But what's more important is people's health because, our health is everything. If we don't have our health, it's hard to live through life. I am so grateful, John, for the work that you all are doing at AirOasis. Keep it up. And for our listening audience, I also just want you to know that people that we identify that have greatly impaired detoxification systems on their precision genetics, I'm going to grab our little box really quickly here. We do the Hope for Healing Wellness Blueprint by Fagron. It identifies individual inabilities to detoxify the body, and that's where having clean air is such a huge thing. So, John, take care. Thanks for joining me today, and I've learned a lot today, and I hope that our listening audience has too.
I hope we helped a lot of people with the information. Thank you for having us today, Paula.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at Get to the Root with Hope for Healing. If this episode helped you, follow and share it with someone who needs it, and leave a review. It helps others find us too. For a free consultation, visit our website at gettotheroot.com with the number 2 and schedule a welcome call. We'll see you soon.